Imagine your company's bank account is about to overdraw in like 3 hours.
Which is a complete nightmare scenario for any business.
Right, total panic. But before you even pour your morning coffee, an artificial intelligence notices the upcoming shortfall. It analyzes your lending rates, applies for a line of credit, transfers the money, and just saves the business from cascading failures.
And it does all of that without a single human ever pressing a button.
Exactly. No one even knew there was a problem until it was already solved. So, welcome to the deep dive.
We are so glad you're joining us today.
Yeah, whether you are prepping for a high-stakes board meeting tomorrow, trying to catch up on rapidly shifting market trends, or you're just insanely curious about where the world is actually heading, this session is custom built for you.
It really is. And just to set the stage, today's date is March 24th, 2026.
Right, and we are going to synthesize a massive stack of current events into pure, actionable insight.
And I have to say, we are pulling from an incredibly diverse stack of sources today. It's wild.
Oh, totally. We've got NVIDIA's fiscal 2026 financial reports, a comprehensive White House tracking list of U.S. manufacturing investments, SEC policy documents, and global biotech regulatory updates.
Which, I mean, on the surface, those read like dispatches from entirely different planets, let alone industries.
They really do. But our mission today is to connect the dots. We are going to take these four seemingly distinct global shifts: artificial intelligence, U.S. manufacturing, cryptocurrency regulation, and biotechnology, and reveal how they are actually synchronized gears.
Gears that are completely rewiring the global economy.
Exactly. We're calling the theme of today's deep dive the era of execution.
I love that title because we have officially moved past the hype cycle. Like we really have. The theoretical ideas and those little pilot programs from the early 2020s,
Yeah.
they are now physically, legally, and financially hitting the ground.
Well, let's start with the engine driving all of this. Looking at the raw numbers here, NVIDIA just reported their Q4 revenue, and it is a staggering $68.1 billion.
Which is up 73% year over year, by the way.
Right. And their record full-year revenue sits at $215.9 billion.
I mean, the financials are just astronomical.
Huh.
But the real takeaway is a specific phrase their CEO, Jensen Huang, used in the earnings report.
Oh, right, the inflection point quote.
Exactly. He stated that the Agentic AI Inflection Point has arisen.
Okay, let's unpack this, because understanding agentic AI is basically the key to understanding 2026.
It absolutely is.
For the last few years, everyone was focused on generative AI, but the leap from generative to agentic is a massive paradigm shift.
It's totally different.
Right, think of it this way. Generative AI is like a brilliant GPS navigation system or like a smart intern. It calculates the fastest route, points out the traffic, tells you where to turn.
But you still have to physically drive the car yourself.
Exactly, you're still turning the wheel. Agentic AI, on the other hand, is like a level 5 self-driving vehicle. It's an experienced manager.
Right, it doesn't wait for your input.
It puts its foot on the gas, steers around a sudden accident, and legally parks the car at the destination without you ever touching the wheel once.
I think that analogy is spot on. The AI has basically evolved from a conversational assistant into a functional orchestrator.
So how is this playing out right now?
Well, we are seeing this transition play out heavily in SME banking, so small and medium enterprises. The sources actually detail the rise of something called the autonomous CFO.
Okay, wait. If I'm listening to this and I work in corporate finance or middle management, the idea of an autonomous CFO sounds like the ultimate canary in the coal mine for my daily workflows.
Oh yeah, it's definitely disruptive.
How does this actually function on a technical level? Like, how does it know what to do?
Well, it relies on a mechanism called retrieval augmented generation, or RA. And that is integrated directly with a company's enterprise resource planning software, the ERP.
Okay, and just to clarify for everyone, you can think of an ERP as the digital central nervous system of a business, right? It tracks inventory, payroll, cash flow, everything.
Exactly. Now, historically, AI models would just kind of guess or hallucinate based on their broad training data.
Which you definitely do not want in finance.
No, not at all. But with AREG, the AI is actively fetching real-time private data from that specific ERP system before it even thinks about making a move.
So it's looking at the real numbers.
Yes, it is predicting cash flow gaps with 95% accuracy because it's reading the actual real-time ledger.
Wow. Okay, so it sees the data, but how does it actually take action without a human, clicking approve.
Through direct API integrations with the bank.
Ah, okay.
When the agentic AI spots that upcoming shortfall we talked about earlier, it doesn't just populate a dashboard for a human to review.
Because that would just be generative AI.
Right. Instead, it executes an API call to autonomously rebalance funds between subsidiary accounts to avoid overdraft fees. Or it automatically draws down a pre-approved line of credit to ensure zero operational downtime.
That is insane. It reasons, decides, and executes in milliseconds.
It does. Well, and this is a big, but reasoning over an entire corporate ledger every millisecond requires an unfathomable amount of computing power.
Oh, for sure. You cannot run an autonomous CFO on the basic cloud infrastructure we used a few years ago.
Not even close. Which brings us back to NVIDIA.
Right. Our sources mention their Grace Blackwell platform, which is integrated with something called NVLink, is currently the absolute king of inference.
Yeah, and the distinction between training and inference is super crucial here.
Okay, lay it out for us.
Training an AI model is like a student reading textbooks for years to learn a subject. I mean, it takes massive upfront time and energy.
Right.
Inference, though, is the student actually sitting in the room, taking the test, and applying that knowledge in real time.
Got it. So Grace Blackwell is the test taker.
Exactly. Grace Blackwell is designed specifically to make that real-time thinking incredibly efficient. And NVLink is essentially a superhighway connecting the chips, allowing them to share data so fast that the cost per token.
Wait, what's a token again in this context?
It's basically the cost of each individual thought the AI has.
Ah.
With NVLink, that cost drops by an order of magnitude. And NVIDIA is already rolling out their upcoming Vera Rubin platform, pushing that physical limit even further.
So a self-driving financial system analyzing millions of tokens a second requires massive, localized physical compute.
Huge amounts of it.
It requires steel, concrete, and dedicated power grids, which leads us perfectly to the second major shift in our stack, the infrastructure war and a historic boom in U.S. manufacturing.
Right, because the physical reality of the cloud is that it actually lives in massive, energy-hungry buildings.
It doesn't just float in the sky.
No, it definitely doesn't. And the capital currently flowing into building that physical reality is just unprecedented in modern history.
Yeah, looking at this list of mega investments, the scale is honestly difficult to process.
It's mind-blowing.
We have Meta investing $600 billion by 2028 in AI infrastructure.
Yeah.
Then there's Project Stargate, which is a joint effort involving SoftBank, OpenAI, and Oracle, and they are pouring $500 billion into U.S.-based AI data centers.
Just massive sums of money.
And Apple has earmarked $600 billion specifically for U.S. manufacturing.
It's hard to even wrap your head around those numbers.
It really is. Now, I need to pause here because we are pulling these numbers directly from a massive White House tracking list of what they are calling the Trump effect of trillions in new U.S. manufacturing investments.
Right.
And I want to be crystal clear for you listening right now. This deep dive is entirely impartial.
Absolutely.
We are not taking political sides, and we are not endorsing any administrative policies, whether left or right. We are strictly reporting the factual capital flows and the regulatory pressures exactly as they are outlined in these government and corporate documents.
And honestly, what's fascinating here is that when you analyze those factual capital flows, it reveals a deliberate global push for strategic autonomy.
Strategic autonomy. Okay, what does that mean in practice?
Well, nations and megacorporations have basically realized that relying on fragile global supply chains for the hardware that runs agentic AI is an existential vulnerability.
Oh, I see. If a supply chain breaks, you lose your AI.
Exactly. If you don't control the physical data center and the chips inside it, you don't control the AI.
Let's look at a real-world example from the sources. South Korean semiconductor giant SK Hynix.
Great example.
They recently filed confidentially for a $14 billion U.S. public listing, specifically to fund massive new manufacturing campuses, including a high-tech facility in Indiana.
Yep.
But I have to push back on the underlying motivation here.
Okay, let's hear it.
Is this purely an organic free market desire to build faster AI chips near American clients? Because building a semiconductor fab in Indiana from scratch is incredibly expensive and slow.
So slow.
Right, so there has to be a stick behind the carrot. There has to be a hammer forcing this capital movement.
You're completely right. It is absolutely a forced localization. The catalyst here is geopolitical pressure.
I knew it.
U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick recently issued a very stark ultimatum to foreign chip makers, particularly those in South Korea and Taiwan.
And what was the ultimatum?
He essentially said they must manufacture their critical silicon on American soil, or they will face tariffs of up to 100%.
Wow. So the calculus for a company like SK Hynix is brutally simple.
Yeah, it really is.
Build the fab in the Midwest
Yeah.
or get entirely priced out of the most lucrative technology market in the world.
Exactly. The friction of building in the U.S. is suddenly much lower than the penalty of importing. It's a localized rewiring of the most critical infrastructure of the 21st century.
Okay, so let's tie this together. We have Agentic AI ready to execute complex corporate workflows. And we have trillions of dollars physically pouring concrete to build the sovereign U.S. infrastructure to power it.
Right.
But if the software is autonomous and the hardware is localized, the actual connective tissue the money needs, rails that move at the speed of software.
It can't run on legacy analog banking systems.
Exactly. Digital capital needs clear digital laws. And according to our sources, as of March 2026, the United States finally has them.
This is huge. The March 17, 2026 interpretation from the SEC is a landmark shift for global finance.
It really changes everything.
SEC Chair Paul Atkins and CFTC Chair Michael Sillig formally partnered to declare that most crypto assets are not, in and of themselves, securities.
So what does this all mean for the market? Because for years, the SEC seemed to view almost every digital token as an unregistered security.
Which essentially paralyzed institutional adoption, yeah.
Right. So how does a digital token legally transition from being a strict investment contract to just being treated as a digital commodity?
Well, the legal breakthrough comes from analyzing the life cycle of the asset, rather than just its origin.
Okay, let me try an analogy to see if I have the mechanics of this right.
Go for it.
It feels similar to a Kickstarter campaign.
Oh, I like that.
Let's say I'm raising money to manufacture a new complex board game. During that initial fundraising phase, when you give me money based entirely on my promise to build the game, that is absolutely an investment contract.
Right, because you are relying on my efforts to make the game happen.
Exactly. But say 2 years later, when the physical board game is actually manufactured, boxed, and shipped to your house, the contract is fulfilled.
It's done.
Right. If you then sell that board game to a friend, you aren't trading a security. The game is just a game. It sounds like the SEC is finally acknowledging that investment contracts can actually come to an end.
That analogy perfectly mirrors the exact legal framework the SEC is now applying.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. Chair Atkins explicitly stated in the interpretation that it reflects the reality that investment contracts can come to an end. Once a digital network is functional and decentralized, the token is simply a digital commodity powering that network.
That just completely changes the entire risk profile for builders and institutions in the space.
It really does. Furthermore, the Crypto Council for Innovation submitted extensive guidance urging the SEC to utilize something called exemptive relief.
Exemptive relief.
Yeah, it's a highly effective regulatory tool where the agency essentially grants a safe harbor.
Like a sandbox.
Exactly. It allows innovative financial products to operate under specific, heavily monitored conditions while the formal, permanent rules are being drafted.
Is that a new legal mechanism, or is there a precedent for the SEC doing this?
Oh, there is massive precedent. The SEC used exemptive relief starting way back in 1992 to allow the very first exchange-traded funds, or ETFs, to exist.
Wait, really? ETFs started in a regulatory sandbox?
They did. The SEC issued over 300 exemptive orders over several decades before finally formalizing the overarching rules for ETFs.
And that's an asset class that now manages, what, well over $10 trillion?
Easily. And they're applying that exact same proven pro-innovation playbook to tokenized securities and digital commodities today.
That is a huge shift in tone.
It is. When you combine that with the new Genius Act framework, which establishes clear legislative rules for stablecoins, you have a complete departure from the enforcement-heavy approach of the early 2020s. The rails for a frictionless digital financial system are now legally clear.
Okay, so if we pull back and look at the whole board, we have autonomous AI agents, we have localized sovereign compute power, and a legally clear, frictionless digital financial system.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you have to ask, what is the highest leverage problem humanity can apply this triad of technologies to?
That is the million-dollar question. What's the answer?
The clear answer is human health.
Ah, biotech.
Exactly. The biotechnology sector is currently experiencing a hyper-accelerated global race, primarily between the U.S. FDA and China's National Medical Products Administration, the NMPA.
The numbers coming out of China right now are just unprecedented.
They really are.
According to the sources, last year, the NMPA approved a record 120 new drugs, hitting triple digits for the first time ever.
Which is a huge milestone.
And they just issued a major policy update called Announcement Number 3 of 2026.
Right. And announcement number 3 fundamentally alters how drugs enter the Chinese market.
How so?
Well, previously, China utilized a really rigid list-based system for fast-tracking urgent overseas drugs. If your treatment wasn't on their specific pre-approved list, you just waited in the standard queue.
Which takes forever.
Exactly. But now, they have transitioned to an applicant-initiated model.
Okay, what does that mean for a pharmaceutical company?
It means if an overseas manufacturer has a drug that meets certain evaluation requirements, they can apply directly for priority review. And crucially, they can be granted waivers that allow them to completely skip domestic clinical trials in China.
Wait, skip them entirely?
Yes, relying instead on their existing overseas data.
That is massive.
Yeah.
That eliminates years of redundant testing and saves millions of dollars in trial costs.
And we are already seeing the results. Everest Medicines just secured approval in the Greater Bay Area for Velsipity, which is a drug for ulcerative colitis, utilizing these exact expedited pathways.
So, with China essentially removing the friction for pharmaceutical innovation, how is the U.S. FDA responding? They can't just sit still.
No, they are racing to maintain their edge. The FDA is shifting its own scientific paradigms, leaning heavily into mechanism innovation and single trial approvals, particularly for rare diseases.
Okay, let's break down the mechanics of a single trial approval.
Sure.
Traditionally, a drug has to go through phase 1 for safety, phase 2 for dosing, and then 2 massive double-blind phase 3 trials to prove efficacy.
That's the standard long pipeline, yeah.
So how does the FDA justify skipping that established pipeline?
It comes down to precision biology. If a drug targets a very specific, well-understood biological receptor for a rare disease, the mechanism of action is incredibly clear.
Okay.
You don't necessarily need 10,000 patients in a broad phase 3 trial to prove it works if the biomarker data from a single, well-designed trial is overwhelmingly conclusive.
That makes sense.
We saw this in February 2026 with the approval of UVWell for pediatric achondroplasia and Desmoda for central diabetes insipidus. Both sides of the Pacific are actively compressing the regulatory timeline.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting.
Let's hear it.
Here is where the ultimate convergence happens. When you combine that dramatic regulatory compression we just talked about with the newly clarified crypto laws and the agentic AI computing power we discussed earlier, you get the explosion of DeSci.
Yes, decentralized science.
Right.
It is arguably the most profound secondary effect of this entire technological stack.
Traditionally, if a brilliant researcher discovers a promising molecule, they spend like 18 months writing grants, navigating university politics, and begging centralized institutions for funding.
It is a notoriously slow, frustrating process.
But now, with clear SEC rules on digital assets, researchers are forming BioDAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations.
Yep.
They use blockchain networks to crowdfund millions of dollars globally in a matter of days. And they use agentic AI infrastructure to run simulated drug screenings instantly.
It completely flips the traditional model upside down.
But wait, let me stop right there and play devil's advocate for a second.
Okay, go ahead.
You are telling me we are trusting random internet collectives to screen and fund molecules intended for human consumption.
I know how this sounds.
How does a decentralized group of token holders actually maintain rigorous scientific standards without a centralized academic review board?
It's a totally valid concern, but the mechanism of a BioDR actually demands higher transparency than traditional academia.
Really? How?
Well, smart contracts lock the funding to specific, verifiable milestones. Furthermore, peer review doesn't disappear. It gets decentralized.
Ah, okay.
Instead of waiting 6 months for a 5-person university committee to review a paper, BioDOs use token incentives to crowdsource review from hundreds of verified global experts simultaneously.
Oh, wow. So it's actually more eyes on the data, much faster.
Exactly. And they integrate AI models to simulate the drug's interactions before it ever reaches a physical petri dish. The efficiency gains are so staggering that traditional pharmaceutical giants are capitulating.
I saw that's in the notes. The sources highlight that Pfizer recently invested $4.1 million into VitaDO, right? A decentralized science collective.
Yep, they did.
And Pfizer isn't doing that for charity.
No, definitely not.
They see that decentralized AI-driven R&D is simply moving molecules from concept to phase 1 trials faster than their own internal centralized labs ever could.
Exactly. If a company can integrate AI-driven drug design, fund it instantly through a BioDAO, and then push that drug through China's announcement number 3 or the FDA's single trial pathways, they possess an insurmountable time-to-market advantage.
It's just a totally different gear.
It is. The traditional 5-year drug development cycle is rapidly becoming obsolete.
Which brings us full circle to our core theme, the era of execution. We are no longer debating what AI might theoretically achieve. We have autonomous agents actively orchestrating corporate finances today.
Right.
We have trillions of dollars physically pouring concrete to build sovereign hardware inside the U.S.
A literal manufacturing boom.
We have a legalized, regulated digital financial system acting as the connective tissue. And we have a hyper-accelerated biotech sector that is literally going to save human lives faster because of all these converging technologies.
The landscape is fundamentally locked into place. Now think about it. A change in SEC exemptive relief policy accelerates a BioDAO,
which discovers a rare disease drug using NVIDIA inference hardware,
which is manufactured in an Indiana facility built because of tariff threats.
It is one continuous, inescapable loop of execution.
It really is.
And for you listening, whether you are taking this knowledge into a boardroom tomorrow to completely rethink your enterprise software strategy, or you simply want to understand the shifting global currents around you, you are now equipped with the hidden connections driving 2026.
You've got the full picture.
But before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a final, lingering thought to mull over on your own.
This is a big one.
If agentic AI takes over our complex financial workflows, and decentralized networks take over scientific funding, and software removes the friction from everything from drug discovery to global supply chains, what happens to the traditional human gatekeepers?
Right, the people whose job it is to say yes or no.
Exactly. In the next 5 years, what happens to the grant reviewers, the junior analysts, the middle managers, whose entire career was based on managing organizational friction?
It's tough to say.
As the cost of executing an idea drops as close to zero as the laws of physics will allow, will human intuition and creativity become the ultimate, highly paid luxury? Or will it become completely obsolete?
It is arguably the defining economic question of the next decade.
Something to seriously think about. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the world around you, keep looking for the mechanisms behind the headlines, and we will catch you next time.